For Helldivers, Liberty Day has now come and gone. All that's left to do is collect our loot and pick up all the confetti, which I'm told will be left down to the Dissident Diver Cleanup Brigade. Welcome to the channel, it's LtBuzzLitebeer, and beyond the new armor and weapon, Helldivers just collected some invaluable feedback that their KISS model is still successful. Players showed up in mass for Liberty Day, and if you are a developer at Arrowhead, you've got to be feeling good about yourself right now. There's so much to sift through from yesterday, and if you're into all the latest in Helldivers, I've got you covered. As always, thank you so much for your continued support. In case you haven't done so already, please take just a moment to hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss one of my future upload alerts. And here comes all the latest from Helldivers, Liberty Day +1.
System of failure.
I want you to remember this number, 136, because it has some significance in the context of Liberty Day and Helldivers. You see, that 136 represents how many days you have to travel back in time to find a player count that exceeded what Helldivers saw yesterday. You see, back on June 13th was the last time we saw player counts like these, touching over 91,000 players on Steam alone. Now, around that day, patch 1.000.400 had just gone live, and after months of seeing nerfs and power reductions, divers had just received some rather large power increases. Sentries and weapons had been at the receiving end of buffs. Supply lines had appeared in the game. Charger behemoths started also appearing in the game. And this was the first balance patch with Johan now seated firmly in the role of Chief Creative Officer. Things were looking up for the game. The game was trying to make a hard turn back to fun, and the players embraced that change. But that was then. This is now, and through the power of hindsight, we can see that Helldivers, despite what patch 400 had done for the game, was walking a very thin line indeed. What followed was a series of small fixes, an extended Swedish summer holiday, and pre-nerfed Escalation of Freedom update that led to some of the lowest player counts the game has ever seen. Helldivers had nearly flatlined, and it took 2 massive balance patches and a 60-day timeline to bring the game back to an even keel where players felt like they were once again in a position to enjoy the game. Which brings us to yesterday, Liberty Day, a day of celebration within the Helldivers universe where every citizen honors the past and our society's shift over to managed democracy. And overall, this was a stroke of sheer genius, because when you look at what was done by the studio versus the player turnouts, the return on investment was tremendous. SteamDB shows that the peak player counts on PC alone topped over 75,000 concurrent players, placing Helldivers firmly on the Steam top 15 most played games list, and at the time I snagged the screenshot, the total player counts were a bit over 92,000, but actually reached over 100,000 just a few minutes later. And here's the genius behind Arrowhead's plan, because I know what many of you are thinking. With that many players all hitting the game again, there must have been some major new DLC that was released. Maybe a new mode, a new faction. And on all of those accounts, you'd be wrong. There was a free armor set, a ceremonial weapon, and the easiest major order in the history of the game. Just log in, kill some stuff, and embrace managed democracy. But what Arrowhead did is they returned to what has been successful for them in the past. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Which in many ways is the mantra of Helldivers. You see, along with those free login gifts, Arrowhead spent the time creating the supportive narrative behind Liberty Day. We got to see those clever Stroman broadcasts with diver kids snatching Helldivers helmets from the pyres, a 24-hour live stream of Helldivers' greatest hits and trailers, even a full-on fictional Liberty Day highlights schedule. We've got more news to cover in today's video, but maybe at a later date, I'm going to return to this topic and break it down even further. But here's a closing thought for all my viewers out there. If Helldivers saw this kind of player count spike for a helmet, a piece of body armor, a ceremonial weapon, and a celebration, What's it going to look like when the game actually receives an economy revamp, a whole new difficulty setting, new mission types, or even a new faction? Could you imagine what would have happened if during this Liberty Day celebration, the Illuminate just staged a surprise attack through the wormhole on Meridia? What would the player counts have looked like then? 150,000? 200,000? I mean, Helldivers has always shown how potent a formula it can create when it leans into this 1-2 punch of events with rewards while creating the supportive narrative of Super Earth's struggles to spread its concept of managed democracy. Now that the balance is back, the fun, meme-style horde shooter has returned and Arrowhead seems to have worked through its identity crisis, the future is looking incredible for what many have as their game of the year for 2024. All right, on to the news. And for those of you looking to burn some super creds, the Superstore just reset with the Legionnaire lightweight servo-assisted body armor, the matching Legionnaire blast shield helmet, the SC-15 Cade 6 Destiny Drone Master helmet, and the Drone Master medium body armor with engineering kit for +2 throwables. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to spend your super creds, but remember that the new Truth Enforcers Warbond drops on Halloween, October 31st, which is going to set you back 1,000 super credits, and there's always 2 new body armors that release in tandem with that in the Superstore, and expect to see a heavy variant of the new reduced flinch passive show up in there as well, so you make that call. On to questions about the Liberty Day rewards, the helmet, the body armor, and the Constitution rifle. And I was there last night when we finished up the major order and Liberty Day concluded. And what felt like a few minutes afterwards, I got the notice that my rewards had arrived. Of course, results will vary depending on region and platform. And we did get clarification from community manager Twinbeard when he said, for active players, when the MO ends tonight, CET. For inactive players, 1 day later. Future players will have the items at launch. Translation, for anyone that was logged on during Liberty Day and got in a dive, you started receiving your loot immediately. For anyone that did not log in, you start getting yours today, Sunday the 27th. And any future players that don't yet own Helldivers, they're going to receive the items with the purchase of the game. So now you know. Taking a look at the sheer X's and O's of Liberty Day, and clearly the Steam reviews have spiked. Players were liking what they saw. And overall, October has been a very positive month for Helldivers because when you see the large blue trend lines going up versus the small red downvote lines, you are doing something the players like, and clearly, again, Arrowhead has seemed to have found their rhythm. Another fascinating aspect of Liberty Day came down to the player breakdowns themselves, and back to this graphic from earlier. You see, the Steam player count and the in-game total player count picks were snagged within seconds of each other. And the breakdown here is, again, very interesting. 92,000 total players showing in the game at the time I took this pick, while 70K of them were on PC, means that PlayStation accounted for just under 20,000 of those Helldivers. Now, we know from past reports that this game sold extremely well on PC, and that not only is it a Sony-published game, but it is the fastest-selling Sony game of all time. And for many, they immediately lump Sony and PlayStation into one header. But yesterday showed the strength of how well this game has resonated and stuck with the PC crowd. Now, I'm not a part of the Sony ecosystem. I don't own a PlayStation, so I can't speak to that side of things. But there's some untapped PS5 potential here for Arrowhead, as these numbers don't lie. On to the rewards themselves, and here they are. You've got the DP, or Democracy Protects 00 Tactical OG Helmet, the DP 00 Tactical Body Armor, which, by the way, features the Democracy Protects Armor passive, because of course it does. How could it not? A 50% chance to not die when taking lethal damage and preventing all damage from bleeding if chest hemorrhages is a bit of a useful perk. I still prefer others over DP, but when it does proc, it is a literal lifesaver. And finally, here's the R2124 Constitution Rifle. And if you're out there wondering just how effective and deadly this weapon is, you first need to read the description, as it should give you a pretty accurate idea. It says, this ceremonial rifle is modeled after antique relics from pre-democratic times. It is traditionally gifted to every citizen upon turning 16 to encourage service. And of course, we can see the stats here. It says medium armor penetration, 180 damage, a fire rate of 60, and of course, you have that fixed bayonet for some melee action. Now, in terms of comparison to some other weapons in our armory, it's not even close. But that's not the point of the Constitution. It's a ceremonial piece of history for Helldivers. And on a side note, this would actually make a great piece to hang on the walls of our super destroyers right next to our Moodang playpens. Alright, after all that, let's take a look at your top comments from my last Helldivers video. And if you want a shot at seeing your name and comment featured in my next upload, you need to let it fly on this video. Drop a comment, and who knows, viewers might just upvote it enough that it makes it into the top 3. Kicking it off for today is Marco AV313. There is only one present I want for Liberty Day. I want all countries to be able to play Helldivers. Man, Marco, you had to hit us right in the feels with the first comment, didn't you? I truly want this to happen as well. I check on it at least 3 times a day. I'm hopeful that eventually Sony gets their head out of their ass and reinstates all those countries and regions to be able to play this game. Again, fingers crossed on this one. And congrats on taking the #1 spot with your comment. In the #2 spot is Firefight, who says, fun fact, when OG Helldivers first celebrated Liberty Day, they also received the Constitution. In lore, every Super Earth citizen received one on their 14th birthday. Yet, here we see it again being sent out to divers, this time on their 16th birthday. Very interesting lore built up from HD1 to HD2. I've spent about 5 minutes in HD1. It's definitely something I need to revisit and brush up on just a little bit. And congrats, Firefight, on taking the 2 spot for this countdown. And bringing up the caboose in the #3 spot. And here's a very epic comment from Scott3029, who says, starts gone, ammo spent, Pelican emergency descending when you hear the call over mic. Divers, fix bayonets today, we die for democracy, hell yeah. That's an interesting one right there. I might have to assemble the crew. We might have to get together the other Helldivers content creators and do a bayonets only extraction. That one would be pretty tough, but definitely an epic one if we can pull it off. And congrats, Scott3029, for taking the 3rd spot in this countdown. Okay, wow, what a last 24 hours, right? Liberty Day overall was a success, even without the dramatics of a surprise invasion or some sort of added mechanics. And now that the game is playing better than it ever has, I'd expect the new content and mechanics to start arriving into the game, and very soon. Helldivers knows what the formula is. Wild and frenetic gameplay in tandem with lore and storytelling. And if they can keep this course and enhance the game, who knows what kind of player counts we could be seeing in the near future. As always, drop me a comment about anything Helldivers related, and I will do my best to respond. By the way, I love reading your comments, and some of the discussions I see posted down there are actually really interesting. Remember to hit subscribe and to ring that notifications bell so you never miss my upload alerts. All my socials, including an open invite link to our fast-growing Helldivers Discord community, can be found in the video description. Before we go, another massive thank you to the now over 246,000 of you incredible ladies and gents from across the planet who have taken the plunge. You've already hit subscribe, and you tune in daily to support me and the channel. 250K is getting oh so close. And if you haven't joined the channel already, we'd love to have you along for the ride as we make that last little push to this major channel milestone. Until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer, signing off.